Africa, there is a majestic male lion known as the ruler of the Savanna. He possesses a brilliant mane and a proud gait, which makes all other animals fear him. In his territory, no predator dares to challenge his supreme authority. Many tourists from all over the world come to Kruger just to see this lion once in their life. The story begins on a hot afternoon, when a herd of antelopes were grazing by the lake. This male lion stalked them from afar with a cold gaze. He chose a strong but somewhat slow leader deer as his target due to an old wound. After determining the opportunity, the lion rushed forward with incredible speed, extending powerful pounces. The deer panicked and ran away. Many of them jumped into the nearby lake to escape. The deer that was targeted also jumped into the lake, although it was not a good swimmer. The lion, in a frenzy of prey, immediately jumped after it so as not to miss its delicious prey. But the lake was much deeper than it had anticipated. As soon as it touched the water, the lion realized that it was struggling in a dangerous situation. The cold water cut off the strong current below, causing it to quickly lose strength. The deer, although not a good swimmer, managed to swim into shallower water thanks to its efforts. The lion tried to surface, but the swirling current caused it to sink. The mighty roar of the ruler was now drowned out by the sound of splashing water. In just a few short seconds, the lion was exhausted and gradually lost consciousness. Its mane drooped, its body began to sink into the lake. At that moment, a ranger named Sifo was on patrol passing by. Sifo drove a special vehicle, his eyes observing any unusual movements on the grassland. He happened to see the commotion by the lake and had a premonition that something was wrong. At first he thought it was just a lion hunting as usual. But a moment later, he realized that the lion had not surfaced. He immediately stopped the car and rushed to the lake shore without thinking about the danger to himself. Sifo squinted his eyes to search, seeing a patch of orange-yellow mane looming below the water's surface. Without hesitation, he quickly took off his jacket and jumped in. The deep, muddy, slippery water made it extremely difficult to move. After a few dives, Sifo grabbed the unconscious lion's front leg. He used all his strength to pull the lion into shallower water. As he got closer to the shore, he felt the enormous weight of the animal even more clearly. Its breathing seemed to have stopped, its eyes were closed. People often say that confronting a lion is extremely dangerous. But now the scariest thing was that the lion could die at any moment. Sifo laid the lion on its side on the ground, his heart pounding with anxiety. He had learned first aid for wild animals, but this was the first time he had to practice with such a large lion. Without hesitation, he began to compress the lion's chest to pump air into its lungs. His heart was filled with a faint hope. The lion would revive as he had been trained. The compressions were steady and persistent, the sweat on his forehead falling onto the lion's wet mane. A few minutes passed and the lion showed no signs of movement. Sifo gritted his teeth and counted the compressions according to the correct procedure, not daring to stop. He even tried to give mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, carefully avoiding the sharp fangs. Suddenly the lion twitched slightly, its body shaking weakly. Sifo stopped and put his ear close to its mouth to check its breathing. A faint breath of air showed that its heart had begun to beat again. Sifo was filled with joy and quickly called for help from the radio, while continuing to check on the lion. The lion was panting heavily but was showing signs of life. With his experience, Sifo pulled out a syringe containing resuscitation medication. He gently injected it into the lion's muscle, being careful not to cause it more pain. Then he stood back a little, in case the lion woke up in panic. Time seemed to stand still as the two lay panting on the shore of the lake, one man and one powerful predator. Sifo placed his hand on his chest, feeling his heart pounding, still in shock. The lion blinked for the first time, looking around with a hazy gaze. The familiar golden eyes were now tired, but still had a hint of life. It struggled to raise its head, then collapsed again because it was too weak. Saifo breathed a sigh of relief knowing the animal was out of danger but needed time to recover. He lingered to monitor the lion's breathing and heart rate, ready to intervene further if necessary. His radio kept receiving messages asking about the situation, but Saifo assured them he could handle it. The sun was slowly setting, the golden glow of the sunset shining on the lion's wet fur. Saifo opened a small bottle of water, and sprinkled it on the lion's face to help it wake up. The lion tried to stretch, seemingly in response to the cold. Saifo understood that it needed time to calm down, and at the same time needed space to avoid panic. He quietly backed up to the car, turning on the hazard lights to avoid another car passing by. He watched from a distance as the lion began to stir, shaking its head as if trying to shake off the trance. Its large ears perked up, its eyes focused on the car where Saifo was standing. Saifo remained calm, not wanting to scare the animal. Instinctively, the lion roared softly, but the sound was much weaker than usual. He gently stepped closer, holding out his hand for the lion to sniff. The lion did not attack, nor did it run away, but only growled very softly. Saifo smiled, knowing that the animal was gradually realizing that he was not an enemy. After a while, the lion tried to stand up on its shaky legs. It staggered a few steps and then collapsed, looking tired. Saifo gently supported it, but was also ready to pull his hand away if it became angry. He both soothed and spoke slowly, as if the lion could understand. "Calm down, my friend, I'll help you," he whispered, even though he knew it could not understand him. The lion blinked and its breathing gradually returned to normal. Saifo immediately checked its body for injuries. Luckily there were no serious injuries other than exhaustion. He then returned to the car and took out a large piece of cloth to lightly cover its body, keeping it warm during the night. Saifo decided to stay by the lion's side until it recovered enough to move on its own. Night fell and the moonlight illuminated the two distinct figures, now connected by a thread of kindness. The next morning the lion was feeling better and began to walk slowly around the car. It sniffed the air and raised its head, roaring loudly, as if marking the return of a ruler. Saifo smiled, knowing that the lion had passed the critical stage. However, he still used the walkie-talkie to call the support team to bring the lion back to safe territory. Before the team arrived, the lion had agreed to eat some dried meat that Saifo had prepared. It looked at him with a strange look, both proud and somewhat grateful. When the support team arrived, they were quite surprised to see the lion acting gentle next to Saifo. The other staff were still cautious, but Saifo signaled that everything was fine. After checking, they decided to release the lion back into its familiar area so that it would not be stressed. From that day on, every time Saifo drove his patrol car, the majestic lion appeared, silently following and seemingly protecting him in the vast savanna of Kruger National Park, South Africa. Dear friend, thank you for taking the time to follow the story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel to support us.